People who have came close to dying. What were your last thoughts? Oh shit. My sister had to see me drown. I felt pretty calm about it though. NGL, I'm getting jealous of all the calm drownings happening. Mine was not. My experience was calm. Even though I was only 6 or 7 when it happened. I got trapped in some river debris and I have a very vivid memory of staring up at the water surface and thinking this is the end. I was about that age as well. We had a Boy Scouts meeting at the pool. Our high school had an indoor pool. For water sports. Minimum depth was 4 foot. Guess who was not 4 foot? I just remember desperately trying to get my parents' attention as they chatted away with the stupid troop leader, and how none of the 40 plus people stopped to help me. I remember the grasping for literally anything, and coming up empty and then pain. And then everything stopped. No idea how long I was out. The boy I had a crush on accidentally kicked me in the head while he was swimming and I just was suddenly back online. I remember being at the bottom of the pool and literally just pushing myself straight to the surface. Managed to grab the draining ledge of the pool and once I coughed up all the water, I dragged myself out of the pool and went off to the showers because apparently drowning hurts like a motherfucker and 6-year-old me needed a moment to gather herself. Never did tell that boy that he saved my life. Been 25 years. Hey, just so you know, I drowned at the pool and that kick to the skull you gave me slapped the soul back into my mortal shell so I could continue my suffering. Also, had a huge crush on you. Thanks I guess. I was on my deathbed and I thought, man, I wish my mother was here. When I woke up in the ICU, she wasn't, nor did she care. Your shoe isn't tied, I said that to my dad before promptly falling down a 20-foot cliff into the underbrush. Broken arm. Fractured skull. Ruptured kidney. Woke up 2 weeks later to my dad saying thanks for letting him know his shoe wasn't tied as he could have tripped. You know your dad spent those entire 2 weeks fantasizing about saying that to you when you finally woke up. That kinda dad joke is once in a lifetime. That guy hopes anyway. Nothing. Blacked out. But my thoughts before that was happening was something like I shouldn't have gone out today. Body was going into shock and heart was slowing down really fast. I got knocked unconscious and blacked out from a car accident and it was nothing. Like you said. Just darkness overwhelming me immediately. I woke up gasping for air and wondering how the police and ambulance knew the accident was going to happen. I had been out long enough for them to arrive and start tending to some of us, but I thought they were waiting for us. Honestly, this is exactly what I imagine death being like, except you don't wake up gasping for air. My heart stopped beating for 7 seconds while I was eating dinner in my hospital bed waiting to be discharged. I realized I was going to pass out and put my arm across my plate so I wouldn't fall face first into it. All I could think of was this is gonna make a mess. Glad they took their time with the paperwork. Ended up walking out of there 7 days later with a pacemaker at the age of 46. What were you hospitalized for? Heart related issues or something else? I had severe AFib. Kinda stupid that I didn't figure it out. Since my son, 20 at the time, had been hospitalized with it just 2 years earlier. They double dosed me with amiodarone. Got a bolus while in the cath lab and then a pill when I got back to my room. It sure as hell slowed down my heart rate to 0. After a few days they decided I better get a new idle switch so I wouldn't just drop dead. I've had 2 rounds of catheter ablation and still have issues. This is how one of my patients died. But he has 85 and basically already dying from a bone marrow disease. But he was fibbing all over the place. He was rate controlled fairly well. But then Brady downed to 30. Then coded. The IQ brought him back, then coded again. He coded a bunch of times and eventually family said no more. I'm not sad about this patient. I'm glad he is not alive for us to torture him more with more medicine. He was at the end already with no quality of life to speak of. As I was getting the hemorrhage, I remember thinking how embarrassing it would be to die at a Renaissance fair. I choke a lot. Sometimes on my spit. I told my husband, if I die by choking on my own spit I want that put in my obituary and headstone. It's so embarrassing, and that will be my last parting gift. Being awkward. I had a hemorrhage done on me while I was eating Doritos, and it felt like my body was fighting the hemorrhage action. They squeezed and I pushed out. I would clear my airway a little and then it would close again. It was so scary trying my hardest to breathe, and I just couldn't. I noticed I breathe through my mouth a lot, and that's probably the main culprit of my choking episodes. Have you ever brought this up to your doctor? If not, I'm wondering if you might want to do a swallow study where you are given a contrast liquid to drink while they image your esophagus throat to see if anything abnormal is going on. It may just seem like an annoying or silly quirk, but being at higher risk of choking can be life-threatening. So it's worth seeing if that is due to something treatable. AHH. This post scared me. I've got a bad record of choking on water/drink/my own saliva. My father can't stand my coughing fits. He thinks I'm overreacting, and my friends always would get concerned when my face would go red until I told them it happens all the time. I've never actually had any major incident besides the coughing fits, but I guess it's possible it could be worse. Shit. Wasn't the car that hit me white? As I'm looking down at a car underneath me, I'd been hit hard enough I bounced up over the car that hit me and had enough air time to clear the second one. Props to the driver of the third vehicle. He must have stood on the damned brakes the moment he saw me, because he brought the cement truck to a stop before it got to me. Second time I was hit by a car as a pedestrian. I'm now much more careful crossing streets. Not that it's helped much. I seem to have a car magnet in my ass. I witnessed a pedestrian get hit once. He flew over the car and cracked his head on the asphalt. I never found out if he made it, but the first car to arrive was a police officer on his way to work. Ambulance and fire truck were all on the scene in less than 5 minutes. Me and another guy stood out there stopping traffic and basically stood in the road so the poor fellow wouldn't get run over. Had drivers honking at us. I was too busy talking to the guy that got hit, trying to keep him calm, I guess. The other guy stopping traffic stood there flipping the bird at the cars that were honking. I felt bad for the guy that got hit. I think he was suicidal because there were no other cars in the area, and if he had waited 5 seconds he would have made it across the street. I also felt bad for the guy that hit him. Some poor college kid that was just minding his own business. He was not on a cell phone or doing anything out of the ordinary. My mum hit an old lady a couple of years ago. She was on her way to pick up her dog from the dog sitter after work, doing 30 miles per hour in a 30 miles per hour residential zone, not on her phone. Basically just driving and thinking about normal shit. Felt a massive thud at the front side of her car. Immediately stopped and found an old lady had hit her car, like with her body, not in another car. She'd split her head open hitting the pavement. My mum's been a nurse for many years, so even in her shock she did first aid / got a bystander to call an ambulance. Sadly the woman died in hospital about a week later. We still don't know if she just slipped off the pavement waiting to cross or she had dementia and wandered into the road. My mum said her first reaction was that someone had somehow run full force into the side of her car. Obviously there was a police investigation / my mum's car was immediately taken for examination. But thankfully they found my mum hadn't done anything wrong. I guess the dent in the side made it obvious the old lady had hit the car and not the other way round. As her car was taken at the scene, a police officer actually drove my mum to collect the dog and then drove her home. Apparently he was really nice and let her hold the dog on her lap on the way home. Props to that policeman for being kind and not treating my mum like a criminal. The old lady was the main victim obviously, and we were all really sad for her family. But it also really traumatized my mum. Like imagine just doing your daily drive home and then out of the blue accidentally killing someone. For the first week she kept getting flashbacks. She got over it, but it was absolutely horrendous for her. So sad for literally everyone involved in accidents like that. A few months ago, I was driving down a 4-lane main road with a split like trees and stuff between the ongoing and oncoming lane. I switched lanes to the far right because there's a ton of space, and right as I start to speed up, probably going 35 in a 40, so trying to match the speed limit, some woman just walks out into the middle of the road from the left and stopped on the lines. If she didn't stop, probably would have hit her. Then literally not even 100 foot later, some dude has a grocery cart does the same exact thing and acts Like he's about to hit my car with this grocery cart because I didn't stop for him when I would have had to slam on my brakes, and that wouldn't have guaranteed me not hitting him. I was livid. Had a stroke last year and was taken to the ER by my brother. The last thing I remember was asking him to take a picture of me with his phone as I must look terrible. After I was admitted, I didn't remember anything other than dreams until late October, and days after I was admitted, when everything was a blank, they induced a coma so that my brain swelling would go down, and I was critical, so I presume I was pretty close to dying then. I'm sorry to be nosy, but that is extremely well written. Did you have any speech or language difficulties after your stroke? That's it? As I looked at the surface of the water I couldn't reach. Same. Then followed it with the thought that this was something dumb you would see someone do on a show that was popular at that time in the 90s. Rescue 911. And that they would probably do a reenactment of how we all went canoeing. Even after we were warned the river may continue to rise while on our trip. I used to watch that all the time. Think it was that show that gave me a fear of snakes being in toilet bowls. It's the show that has me yell at my kids anytime they try to walk around while brushing their teeth. Because of the one episode where a kid fell and his toothbrush was lodged in his jaw or throat or something. Also, I think someone in my town was on the show. I almost died in a fiery explosion at my old job. My first thought was I'm gonna look like such an idiot without eyebrows. So do you still have your eyebrows? We need answers. My throat feels weird. My gums are itchy and blackness like a deep sleep. Woke up a bit later. Found out I was allergic to crab the hard way. My uncle nearly died that way. He went to sleep after eating crab, and if my grandpa didn't go to the bathroom, he would died. His room was next to the bathroom, so my grandfather heard him struggling. He was saved by the pee. No, he did not pee in his mouth. He called 911. Rip Uncle Millie. But who is Tom Sleep? God, why can't I breathe right now? Just wish I could breathe. Oh, I'm getting tired. Anaphylactic shock. Each time. It's happened multiple times. Same thing each time. On a ski trip we ordered dessert and my friend had just had a serious allergic reaction the week prior, so still a little freaked she asks the waiter insistently if there's any nuts in the dessert. We see she's deathly allergic. Dude barely acknowledges her and says no. Dessert comes out, and with the first bite she chomps down on a fucking walnut. Twice in less than 2 weeks for this poor girl. People seriously don't respect food allergies. Damn. I probably shouldn't be shocked, since I've heard so many stories where people did their best at restaurants, checked and double checked with the staff, and even purposely avoided dishes that might have their allergen, and still get burned, either through the restaurant's negligence or through honest mistake, and in many of those stories, died. What happened after that girl found the walnut? She spat what she hadn't swallowed of the dessert immediately, and we did our best to calm her, and she had something preventative with her. She went and did maybe an EpiPen, or she just popped a Benadryl maybe. I just remember feeling stunned and useless and baffled at how unfair the whole ordeal was, and how shitty that guy was. She was on the verge of tears, and I was kind of in shock that it actually happened. There wasn't anyone to escalate to BC. We were literally on the side of a mountain in a yurt with just the cook and his one awful waiter dude. She definitely felt irritation, but she didn't know if it was just nerves. BC, she was so upset and freaked or legit reaction. So we stayed seated a bit longer to make sure nothing worsened. I hope waiter dude was shitting himself while we sat there with our friend he had just poisoned. What the F? Bow. Son of a bitch. RF, don't run me over. Me being run over by a car while on my motorcycle. I had a guy turn in front of me at an unprotected green light. My last thoughts before impact were, fuck, my bike is only 3 weeks old. About 5 minutes later, about 100 foot down the road where I landed, I got into it with the paramedics, who wouldn't let me sit up to check on my bike. Eventually sat up far enough to see her ripped in two, laid back down, and shut the F up. Back in the 80s my parents had something like that happen, but the lady ran the red because she was late for work in a hurry and didn't see the light change. They hit the front right side panel of the car and sailed clear over, landing in the intersection. no helmets. According to the eyewitness report, the Harley stayed right where it was at. My mom said she was screaming my dad's name and she couldn't see, but he was right there next to her in the intersection. 10 years later I was born. My dad has a huge nasty deep scar down his neck from surgeries and walks stiff as a board now. My mom recently passed, but she also had all kinds of road rash. Oof. Yeah. The recovery was not fun. I didn't even break anything and it sucked. It was the first time that year it topped over 100 degrees, and I made the stupid decision to ride without a jacket. You know what hurts worse than getting road rash? Road rash that starts to heal only for the scabs to break, and the wound reopens whenever you move. I was in the process of being electrocuted. Having been working all day atop a scissors lift, the electricians had left a 277 volt line live, and while I was standing and reaching, while running the last low voltage run of the job, I contacted their line. I saw the white light at the end of the tunnel. All I knew was throbbing and 60 cycle noise and the white light. My last thought was I wonder if I can tell my knees to unlock. Obviously they did. Since I'm here typing this, severe electrical burns. Still here living the life. As a teenager, I decided at one point to stick a paper clip in the end of one of those light up candles you place in the windows for Christmas. I remember a blue spark popping out and how I could actually feel the electricity moving from my hand and up my arm. Luckily it didn't get farther than my shoulder, but my heart was kept beating extremely fast for a good 30 minutes or so that jolt really stays with your system for a while. Very cautious around electricity now. It's why after serious electric shocks they say to go to the hospital to get checked out and monitored, I'm sure. Even if you get off the current and seem fine, just so, it can still mess with your heart for a while. Electrician here. After an electric shock your heart can be out of whack, but it will still beat and pump blood around okay for a while. But if it is in that out of whack state it can also just stop suddenly or get worse very rapidly / stop pumping blood properly. There are people who have died up to 48 hours after an electric shock because of this. You likely won't be able to tell by taking a pulse or how you feel, but it will be obvious on an ECG immediately. If you get shocked you must get an ECG as soon as possible, preferably within 24 hours. I wonder how they fix this. Was run over by a bus last year. My thought when I went under the tires was, but it's a Wednesday. You were almost a sacrifice to Wednesday Frog. My dude. I know man. Ribbit ribbit. I thought about how I didn't buy enough pizzas from my favorite pizza place. It's pretty good. But thinking about pizza when you think you're dying is pretty depressing in retrospect. That sounds like an interesting way to die. Thinking about pizza. Hopefully you stocked up on those pizzas after that. So much so that I'm friends with the owner, and she invited me to her son's wedding. I think I buy too much pizza. There is never too much pizza. What was that bang sound? Did you get shot? Or was it a car accident? Nah. Someone shot at a moose and scared it, and then it charged at me and almost gored me to death. How does one miss a moose when hunting? They're enormous. Oh, they hit it. Just didn't kill it. Hence the problem. I should cut that meatball in half. A coworker of mine choked on a meatball too, and he put a fork down his throat to try to retrieve it. He did. But I'm glad he didn't stab himself. I can imagine him having to stick a magnet down their necks to retrieve the fork, and then sticking another magnet to retrieve the magnet. This is the worst game of operation yet. Who is holding me underwater? I almost passed out. I didn't even know the kid. I can't imagine the struggle. I was just a skinny little kid too. That kid was twice my size. Some kids are such bastards. One girl decided to beat me up in a locker room because she didn't like my voice. Luckily my sister was nearby and punched her into oblivion. Jokes on that bully. I was able to work as a voice actor for a few years because of my chipmunk voice. When I was in preschool there was this kid named Radek, and Radek wanted the chair a little girl was sitting on. So what did he do? Of course Radek tackled the girl to the ground, held her down, and plunged his thumbs into her eyes. Then he took the chair and left as the girl was screaming in agony. The girl's left eye permanently moved to the left a little. Mind you, they were both 5. Hello. Have you ever had a headache that was so bad? I mean, like call your parents and ask them if you were still on the healthcare plan, even though you live in Canada and they live in the USA. Yes, I've had this pain. I felt as if my head was going to implode. I was half right. I had a brain clot, then bleed. So a stroke and a aneurysm all at once. My last thought, before I regained consciousness weeks later, I don't want to die in this shitty ground level apartment. I had a sudden headache that was so terrible I couldn't even pick up the phone and call 911. It was right after orgasm. Having sex with my girlfriend after a 12-hour car ride. Turns out clots can form when you stay stationary for a long time in a cramped car. And when your blood pressure gets up high enough to blast it from its spot, you have a bad time. The headache was so bad, I couldn't control my arms and legs, and I just screamed. 3 times. Once almost drowning deep end of pool at 5. Once trapped under flipped ATV in a river. And once being shot at by a crazy old deaf who thought I was a deer. I thought of my mom crying every time. Bro, don't leave your house anymore. I can't believe this is how I die. Drunk. Falling off a 30-foot cliff into about 2 feet of water at Lake Havasu. As on spring break. It just hurt really bad. Yeah, but imagine how bad it would have hurt if you weren't drunk first. Being drunk might have saved his life. With his muscles relaxed, there probably wasn't as much of a giant shockwave traveling through his body from the impact. This is pretty much what I've always assumed. I was 3rd day of spring break drunk, and it was the year I turned 21. I somehow hit, I think, parallel to the water on my side. And I just kinda remember that side of my body tingly and immobile. I was all by myself and had probably 50 yards to side stroke back to the houseboat I came from. Got a little help onto the boat and found a nice comfy chair topside for the rest of the day. Pretty sure I still went out that night with my friends, but could barely walk the last few days. I'm 100% positive this is where all my back problems in my 30s and 40s came from.